Hey guys, Parfax here, and today we're going to be talking about the things you need to know and how you're going to gear your characters next patch. Alright, let's get started. So before we start this video, just to note, we are on the PTR and these are all PTR updates. Now we haven't seen an update for any of this stuff in a little while, and it seems like these changes are going to go to live, but just know before you go wasting all of your hard-earned coins on this new gear, then I would just stockpile materials and wait and see what's going to go happen, what's going to happen, because as much as everybody thinks they know the meta is going to change. What people think it is right now, I can guarantee you in a month or a month and a half, it is probably not going to be that exact thing. What we consider to be BIS right this second, probably is not going to be BIS. Even if you have, the numbers, there's a lot of things that can change in that short period of time. So just note that even the BIS on live, aside from the fact that the last 4 months has been, well, pretty much stagnant, it changes so often and changes what's in the meta. Nobody was running thrust protection amulets or slash protection amulets, and now they are, and stamina recovery, and there's a lot of things that can change. So don't just spend all of your coin right now. Wait to see how everything develops, obtain a few pieces of gear that you can find for really cheap, and then start there. So out of that long-winded talk, let's start talking about the big changes and a few things that I haven't really heard anybody talk about. So the big thing we're going to talk about is Fortify. Now we're going to talk about other things as well, but the Fortify change is going to kind of snowball us into a bunch of other discussions. So we're going to talk about what Fortify is now, how it's going to change. We're not going to go over the calculations. There's been a ton of videos out there about that. But essentially, when you look at Fortify, it is going to go from what Fortify was before. Delete that from your mind, no longer exists. And now it's just going to be a generic armor increase. And a very minor way to think about it: if you're in light, dump it. You don't want it, you don't care about it. It's not going to give you almost any value at all. If you're in medium, it's going to give you a little bit of value, and if you're in heavy, it's going to give you a little bit more value. Now, it's going to give you more value the more your armor goes up. So if you're in something like sword and shield like I am right now, because we have a tower shield on there, it is going to give us even more benefit. So the tankier you are, the better it is. Now, have no fear, there are some things in here that we're going to talk about that you can start kind of making your builds around, or at least thinking about making your builds around, because there's going to be a change in the defenses. So before there was a 50% basically damage cap or damage mitigation cap. Now they've split these things into two different types of mitigation caps. So we're going to go ahead and go on New World Database so we can kind of show you a little bit better there. All right, so we are on New World Database, and we're going to look at, this is first, the live section. So this is what Fortify is right now. Incoming damage is reduced by 20%. So the very base value on live, the way that Fortify works, or just damage in general, is whenever you're damaged, your armor will mitigate the first part, and then your damage absorption will mitigate it from there. Now, when you go to the PTR section, it's just going to give us an increase in armor. So that first value that's mitigated, it's going to be mitigated by the Fortify is going to affect the first part of the damage that is mitigated. What this means for almost every build in the game, it is going to mean you are going to take more damage. Now, before you freak out, there's a couple things that we have that kind of get a bump in value. Now, next, what everybody's been talking about is elemental aversion, and we do have to put physical aversion in this category. The reason why people are talking more about elemental than physical is because they're like, well, we can go elemental aversion and then stack onyxes. Well, you can do the exact same thing with physical aversion, but it only mitigates some of the blunderbuss shots and the bow shots. Now, blunderbuss is going to receive another nerf, and we don't know how much that's still going to be in the meta. Still going to be very good, even though it did receive kind of a few nerfs, hidden nerfs that people hadn't really talked about, but it's still going to be very good. Everybody's defenses are lower, and if the blunderbuss receives a damage nerf, it depends on how much it is, because everybody's going to be squishier for the most part anyway, so this is just probably like a net even, but I don't have the numbers, so I can't see. So the reason why we're talking a lot about elemental aversion is, you can see here we are on the PTR, and it says receive 3.9% less damage from range elemental attacks. So this is basically old Fortify, and this is essentially what it is on live right now. It hasn't changed. It's going to be in a damage absorption. So if you have Fortify and you have, well, here's new Fortify, and then you have elemental aversion, the Fortify is going to mitigate the first number that's hit, and then or I should say the initial hit that you take, and then the elemental version is going to mitigate it after that. This is very powerful. Damage absorption in receiving less damage is significantly more impactful than Fortify for almost every build. So we want to make sure we have as much of this as possible. So another way we're going to get this is by our gems. So again, you see we have 2.5% physical damage absorption. So we're getting another way to get that damage absorption. These are going to be your extremely impactful tools. Now, here's the sort of caveat. A lot of builds right now are running rune glass gems. So let's go ahead and we will bring up we'll go igniting rune glass. So we have the rune glass of igniting here, and we can see that we have 2.5% physical absorption on our gem here, and then when we get to the rune glass, it only gives you 2%. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is going to, want to take these out of their gear. You're going something like a very damage heavy build, and it's still going to be very good for you to get that 2% damage over the 0.5% of damage decrease. Now, if you have one that's like, let's say you have a fire gem in your gear and you put a rune glass on it, it's going to mitigate a full percentage point of the damage absorption. But if you're running a really tanky set and you are just throwing the gems in there for a little bit extra damage, it might be something you might want to think about of not putting in your armor, because you are going to leave a lot to be desired. I mean, it's only 2.5% damage absorption, but as I said, the damage absorption is super important next patch. One of the last things I want to talk about on this before we start diving a little bit more into the Fortify changes when I go in the PTR, I do want to note that things like Cunning, Heart Rune, and Stone Form, which are absolutely crazy good right now, especially on light armor healers, is going to be, well, pretty crap next patch. This is going to give you a max of 40% Fortify, and it's going to be really bad. So if you want to swap it out, we can do things like maybe Mending Fortify, which isn't the greatest, or Brutal Heart Rune, a Stone Form. So Stone Form gets a pretty big hit. Now, you're still going to get the best part of it, which is you can't be crowd controlled during it, but it is something to think about when you come to all these, Heart Rune gems that give you Fortify. If you're in light armor now, these aren't going to give you much of a benefit anyway. I mean, if you're running a heavy armor bruiser next patch, this is still going to be fine. It's going to give you a nice bit of extra tankiness. It's still going to be really cool, but for your healers and stuff like that, you're probably going to want to swap to probably, honestly, this one right here. Heal you for 75% heart rune damage per second while active, reduced outgoing damage by 20%. And then you have a little bit of Fortify because we can't really get away from it. So yeah, just keep that in mind whenever you are looking at your heart rune gems, that, well, the Cunning Heart Rune, which almost everybody was running, is getting significantly nerfed because of the Fortify changes. So here are my final thoughts. When it comes to PvE, light melee DPS, which is almost the entire bit of the meta, is going to see a significant reduction in survivability. It is going to be absolutely crazy. People are going to get absolutely clapped in the first couple weeks. They're going to run the same builds they ran on live, and it is going to affect you. How you combat this, it's going to be something we're going to have across the board. It's going to be protection amulets with the proper elemental rune glass or elemental gem in your armor. A lot of people run opals, which is fine for now. They still die a lot, but you're still fine if you know what you're doing. Next patch, it is going to be significantly more important to get the right elemental gem in there. You might have to run extra con instead, but do you really want to sacrifice damage for a little bit of coin? Probably not, especially considering we are going to be taking a damage decrease from almost every weapon in the game, not named Fire Staff, and a little bit of Blunderbuss, but we don't know about the Shrapnel Blast change yet, whether that's a decrease in damage, but no one was running, the Blunderbuss anyway. So everything is going to get a damage decrease because of the crit change. We're not going to go in those too in depth, but just note your crit damage got nerfed. You're going to do less damage. You're going to be not as tanky. So runs are going to be significantly longer. You're going to have to pull less mobs, and it's going to be a stark difference. People are going to get absolutely clapped the first couple weeks because Greatsword's going to be the highest DPS in the game. Again, it didn't really lose a whole lot of its damage. It lost a little bit, but not a whole lot. But it is going to be a very different play style. You're going to go a lot slower, or you're going to have to really ramp up your defenses in other ways via the elemental gems, the protection amulets, that kind of stuff, because it's going to be a stark difference. Whatever the speed runs are before this patch, they're going to probably stay that for a very, very long period of time, because it is going to be significantly harder to get those done because you're going to be so much squishier. Now, a lot of people are going to clap back at that and they're going to say that I'm wrong, but I'm not. So we will see come next patch when everybody is dying to the mobs because they don't have the same defense as they had last patch. When it comes to PvP, it's a lot more up in the air. We know that Fortify is getting changed. Fortify on light armor users is gone. We are not running that. If you're running a build that takes it in the tree, you might not even take it anymore. I don't even know if I'm going to take it on the fire staff. Now, it is some innate defenses. It does give you a little bit of tankiness, but it is significantly nerfed. Like I said, the rune glass gem, stone form, that got a huge nerf. And then when it comes to all the other builds, medium and heavy, I think is still going to run some Fortify. Are they going to run a lot of Shirking Fort? I'm not sure. Stuff like Fortify and Whirlwind got a nice little buff because we can go over that 50% cap now. It is going to allow us to stack that up and get massive sets of Fortify and actually really bump our stuff up. Now, I think Fortify is going to be used on Sword and Shield users in heavy armor. You know, you have Sword and Shield Void, Sword and Shield Great Axe, Sword and Shield Warhammer, whatever that's going to end up being in the meta. I think it's going to be utilized on those, not as utilized on medium and light. Now, just because we don't think it's going to be utilized doesn't mean you shouldn't, you know, worry about it or just throw out all your pieces of gear, because this stuff can change. We are in the PTR and that could change as well. I think the Fortify nerf was a little bit too much. I think it should scale a little bit higher, bump all the values up by about, you know, maybe 30%. It's still going to make light armor not want it. It's still going to make light armor not really utilize it very much, but it really helps out that medium and even heavy play styles. And then when it comes to, like I said, your medium aversions are obviously going to be good. Now, everybody's going super crazy into elemental aversion, which is going to be nice. But the problem here is, you know, there's going to be ways around it. The typical build that I've seen people are going to be doing is 5-piece elemental aversion. And then we're going to do, you know, full onyxes in our gear. Well, the problem with that is a lot of bruisers are going to run elemental gems in their weapon anyway, and then they're going to smack you really hard, and it's still going to be a little bit lacking in that defensive style. Now, the one thing I do like about this upcoming patch is really going to, you know, have you play around a specific play style, right? Or you're going to have to build your character around. Right now, you just do straight generic fortification. It's going to give you damage absorption against everything. There's not really going to be one build that doesn't have necessarily a weakness, and that weakness will be exploited. Like I said, everybody wants to run elemental aversion, run onyxes, and then any melee with elemental gem is what you'll have to, you know, sacrifice to. But let's be honest, a lot of those people that are running those are going to be inside the clump, and what's inside the clump going to have? Elemental weapons, elemental melee weapons smacking you in the face. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Light armor, aversion. I'm going 4-piece elemental, 1-piece physical, and 1-piece flame conditioning. My chest piece is going to have elemental aversion, flame conditioning, resilient, and then I'm going to have elemental aversion on 3 of the rest of the 5 pieces or 4 pieces, and then 1 piece of physical. Now, one thing that does kind of skyrocket in price, in my opinion, is actually critical retribution. If you're on Fire Staff, if you're on VGIG, these are builds that really want to crit. And with the crit change, they basically made it so you don't get guaranteed crits anymore, at least when it comes to, if you know how live works, every time you hit, your crit chance goes up and up and up until you crit, and then it goes back down to base. No longer is that going to be the case. You're just going to have a base critical chance, and then it's going to just stay there, just like normal crit chance would work. So critical retribution on VGIG and Fire Staff especially is going to be really popular and really good once people start learning about it, and it's going to be pretty impactful for those builds. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe like always. I want to just kind of bring you this video about my final thoughts on the PTR. We're going to have my Fire Staff video coming out. We're going to have my PvP one. We're going to have another PvE video coming out for Fire Staff. We're going to have some, what I think is going to be the PvE DPS tier list coming out, along with a few other things. Maybe get, you know, prepared for the patch and everything like that. But all right, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe like always, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.